Did anyone go to the Sky Deck? On the, okay, did you do that suspended in space thing?
Yeah, the way.
Nice. Christina and I were talking about that yesterday.
No, thank you.
And we said, okay, we'll pass. We'll just generate a AI image.
There you go.
Isn't that a cool, practical AI use case?
Saves your life.
Yep. And that's kind of what we are here to talk about, identifying your AI and automation use cases. All right, that's us. I'm Subi Babu. I'm an engineering lead at MongoDB. And I'm joined here by Bill Mitchell. Bill leads the marketing strategy and operations team.
And hello, I'm Christine. I probably have worked with a lot of you already working on our automation use cases and AI use cases. So really excited to talk to you again about AI and automation today. So yeah, very cool.
So we at MongoDB have been using AI and automation for almost a year now. And since then, we've seen 400% increase in publishing velocity, and we have a few other very cool use cases identified and which are in progress as well. So very excited to talk about some of that today.
Very cool. Yeah, and as I said, we've been working on automation here. It's funny, we were joking about both Subi and I'm sure Bill also has multiple dozens of years of experience in the field, but in terms of AI, just 2 years, which is really long, since the very beginning. But yeah, we both have a lot of experience working in the field, and obviously we've been working on AI and automation together for a couple of years now.
All right, quickly going over the agenda here. We'll start off with MongoDB's AI journey, and then we'll dive into how to identify a practical AI use case. And then we'll have a deeper dive into some of the use cases where we'll actually identify, look into how can you identify your next AI and automation use case.
And how many people are using AI in a day-to-day business use case today? Pretty 50%, I would say maybe? Okay, interesting, great, cool.
The clicker is... Oops. It just happened.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you much. So let me start off with a little bit about who MongoDB is. We are the world's leading modern database to differentiate ourselves from the Oracles and Microsofts of the world. Essentially the NoSQL side of things. So technology has been around for about 20 years, and MongoDB has been leading in this space for 15, 18 years now. We've got tens of thousands of customers in 100-plus countries. So it's pretty well established. Any of your engineers in the room or your colleagues will certainly have heard of us. Very prevalent in a lot of your applications. If you jump to the next slide. This is a high-level look at some of those customers. And I specifically call out the big white one there under technology. If you guys are Contentstack customers, you're using MongoDB. We run under the covers. All your data is housed in our database. And if you're using the brand kit, the new product that they announced last year at this time, that's actually using a separate MongoDB product, but that's the LLM that's helping to the vector database that's allowing you to customize your queries around a certain topic, your brand voice, your affinity, and things like that. That's something that we brought to the table in helping Contentstack with. But we're also a customer. I mean, that's why we're here talking about what we do with the product. But just so you know, we're also a part of the tech stack, if you will, that you're all using, or at least existing customers. About our team, so I lead a group within marketing operations that we have our analysts looking at all the things we do from a metrics perspective, how we run the business. We've got people looking at the operational side of things, setting up campaigns and data flows. And then the web team is part of that charter as well. Within the web team, we have essentially two groups brought together. Subi leads a big part of that with all the developers. So we actually have engineers in marketing and in marketing operations. We're actually building the experience, working with Contentstack and other providers to bring all that together. And then the web experience team is helping us partner with the folks in the business. So they're looking at how we actually bring the experience to life. The analogy I always use is like a pane of glass. Half the team is working under the covers to build the experience. The other half is actually utilizing it. But they're working with their internal stakeholders to build content, everything from the homepage to product pages, the blogs, and all the things that we do to bring that part of our company's web experience to life. We have sister teams that work on documentation and other parts of our portfolio, but our group here is looking mostly after the MongoDB.com web experience. And with that, I will pass it, I think, back to Subi, right?
Thank you, Bill. So how did we start all of this? So around 2.5 years back, we identified certain key areas where we could optimize our content operations. And with that, we quickly understood that we have to modernize our technology stack, and that included Contentstack as a CMS. But what we also realized is that we needed to modernize our front-end tech stack as well. So we embarked on this journey to transform our tech stack, including the CMS, Contentstack CMS on the back end, as well as the front-end technology stack using Next.js. And our key goals with the transformation were streamlining the content production. So we had multiple CMSs going on. So one primary objective was to unify all the CMSs to have enterprise content management features, right? So Contentstack was definitely a great choice there. And faster time to market. We needed a system that would scale to bring our solutions to our customers fast. And SEO optimizations, all the SEO goodness like page speed, core web vitals, tagging, classifications, all those were big goals as well. Translation workflows, we operate globally, so translating into 8 or more languages was a key goal as well. Experimentation, so user testing, being able to do user testing with experimentation. We use Optimizely. That was a big goal for us as well, and great that Contentstack integrates very well with Optimizely as well. And personalization. We've heard a lot about personalization today, and it is a dream state for any digital experience, right? If you can, personalize your content, nothing greater than that. Like if you are someone in the financial industry, if you know that MongoDB has customers like Wells Fargo or a Goldman Sachs, that would be much more relevant to you as a financial customer.
And I think that these kind of goals are probably very similar. Like if I see some nodding of heads there, probably most of you have very similar goals that you're looking at solving with AI and automation and just digitization kind of your workflow. So yeah, it's really cool. Do you want me to push the?
Yeah, if you can.
There you go.
So our digital transformation was proceeding in a very steady progress state, but around a year back, when we had the prospect of using AI and automation, the reason it was very important was it would help us to accelerate our digital transformation, right? And one thing we looked at is what are the areas where a lot of manual effort is being spent. So those were the areas we were looking to automate with AI and the Automate product. Plus, also, another key aspect was we wanted to build that advocacy within MongoDB itself. So we were pioneering the use of AI and Automate within Contentstack, so that once we optimize our processes, we would be building that advocacy with other teams within MongoDB as well.
Yeah, I was just say, I think that MongoDB was a really interesting use case for us and we've had several different customers where they'll come to us and say, we need to do this particular thing, right? We've identified a specific workflow that is taking us 400%, longer than it should or whatever, and we need to optimize this. Or what they were looking at is kind of here are our goals, help us figure out specific automations or specific workflows that we can optimize to help us get to these goals, if that makes sense. So sometimes we might have very specific things identified that we can help you work on, or if it's just let's look at our workflows in general and brainstorm different areas, and then kind of we might come up with 8 different optimizations that could be made, then we'll actually kind of categorize those and say which ones have the highest return on investment, which ones can help you out the fastest, and then prioritize those and actually help you kind of implement those.
Can you click on the next
Yes.
slide? Thank you. Yeah, before I jump into what we actually did, wanted to talk a little more about how we use Contentstack's AI accelerator program. So with the AI accelerator program, we had expert guidance from the Contentstack experts throughout our implementation of our proof of concepts. So what that did is it cut down the learning curve because we had ready access with the experts themselves. And with that kind of guidance and with all the proof of concepts, we were able to save several hours of manual effort. Like I was mentioning in the beginning, we were able to increase our publishing velocity in a certain use case by 400%. What that means is faster time to market, right? When time saved equates to faster time to market.
Do it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Did it go the other way?
Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the learnings, those are important, right? So what did we, I'll jump into the use cases shortly, but what did we learn from this experience? One big thing is that it's very important to pick use cases that would solve practical everyday business problems. So that is one key learning that we got from this experience. Another thing is the importance of proof of concepts, right? You do not have to solve the whole thing or boil the ocean. You can pick a subset of your use case and implement a POC on that. What it does is it proves your point on the subset, and that would help you evaluate the POC and let you, if you like it, if it's going well, you can always iterate on that, make it bigger. If not, it's, you'll be able to fail fast as well.
Awesome. You want to talk about it?
No, go back one more. Missing that slide, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Random order slides.
Yep,
Great.
yep. Yeah, getting into our use cases. We had a whole list of use cases we could go after, but to start with, like I said, we wanted to go after something that would give us some quick wins. So out of the list here, the first couple are quick wins for us, which specifically helps us with the CMS migration project. So the first one here is automating the bulk publishing tasks. So since we are in the CMS migration phase, there were a lot of activities that the publishers needed to do in terms of changing the configs on bulk pages, right? This is not 1 or 2 pages. It's think of a batch of 100+ pages. So when you're talking about a single page, if you want to change a config and if you publish on a single page, it takes maybe 5 minutes of your time. But if it's a 100-page batch, that the time adds up, in fact, multiplies, right? So we were able to automate that, and that made the CMS migration publishing process much more faster. Now, on an average, it went down from 2.5 hours worth of work to getting it done in 5 minutes. And think of the time savings when you have to do this multiple times throughout the process. So that resulted in 400% increase in our publishing velocity for our CMS migration process. And the second one, again, is data migration across stacks. As many of you might be having, we have a production stack and a testing stack. The production stack has production data, and the testing stack is for our QA teams and for development to happen. So a lot of times for close to production testing, it is very important to get the production data into the testing stack. And the second use case there helped us replicate the production data into the test stack. So those 2 use cases, again, were quick wins for us in the CMS migration process. But we had bigger goals, right? And we did not want to jump into the use cases with bigger scope and the ones that those touch content right away. But once we gained confidence with the initial 2 use cases, we were ready to move on to our next use cases. The next one here is automating the SEO tagging. Our SEO team has a lot of parameters and definitions for tagging and classification, but this needs to be applied to a whole worth of pages, right? We are talking about hundreds and thousands of pages. So with the SEO tagging POC, what with the help of Contentstack we were able to prove is that the tag definitions from a spreadsheet can be applied to hundreds or thousands of pages. So the tag definitions and parameters would be defined in a spreadsheet, and using Automate, the tags can be applied several hundreds or thousands of pages, can get the appropriate SEO tags. So that was that use case right there.
And I think, and that's a really interesting case too, where having a human look at a spreadsheet with 65 categories and it's in this category if it's before 2016, in this category if it's after, those kind of things, a human is going to not do that as well, right? So we're able to kind of apply that to a rule set and have that automated, and you'll actually get more consistency and more accuracy using an automated process with AI.
And the next one right here is translation. This is we use a translation provider, but this AI Translate, Contentstack AI Translate, was a POC for us to explore using translation in a bulk scale to look at potential cost and time savings for use cases for, let's say, for experimentation, right? If we wanted to go after a new market, maybe we're not sure about it yet, we could use something like the Contentstack AI Translate to translate content into that new language. So that would be an use case. So what we were thinking of is not to overhaul the whole translation ecosystem, but kind of thinking of it as kind of in tiers, right? Your most important pages, you would definitely want more precision, and you would want human reviews and all of that for your most important pages, your home page and your most critical pages. But if you have those bulk pages that you're okay with not having human reviews for every single page, Contentstack AI Translate could be a great alternative, because that would help you achieve the translation in a fraction of the cost and much more faster as well.
And that might be, again, I would be curious if some of your organizations today are using ChatGPT or something else in order to do headline writing, keyword tagging, translations, but you're copying and pasting back and forth. And then you might have different people using different models and different prompts for how they're creating that. Doing something like this where you're operationalizing the use of AI within your organization so that everybody's using the same prompts and the same brand and all that stuff, I think is very important. So again, if you have something like that happening where you're copying and pasting back and forth from ChatGPT, that's something to look at to see how you can kind of draw that in and make sure that you're controlling, from a business perspective, the use of AI in those cases.
Yep. And personalization, of course, we are getting started on the personalization, the Contentstack Personalize, and very excited to start using the Lytics data activation platform there as well.
How many of you guys like that chart this morning with the bubbles floating? That's super cool. I'm so excited about that.
The power of all that data is immense.
Yeah, I think what you guys see here is probably not the sexiest part of AI. I mean, until you get to personalization, where you're actually translating content or generating experiences on the fly. That's coming, the 2030 mantra from this morning. But in our world, in the practical world, like the Verizon use case from earlier, time to market, speed, operational efficiencies, there's just so much, not easy, but quicker wins that can be derived from these technologies. So I know our bosses, my bosses, all about the sex and how we can get, new web experiences and all these cool things. At the same time, though, these efficiencies, saving hours of people's time lets them apply that time to other parts of the project, speeding up other things. So there's big wins here to be had, even if it's not as sexy as some of the other things that your senior leaders will be talking about.
Yeah, and it's great to get started, right? Just make sure that you have something inside of your organization where you have a very specific flow that you are working on, and then you can start branching out from there, right? Do you want me to progress? Is that the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So I have my own thing. Yeah, and I will say, if we can point out for 1 minute that sometimes, I'm definitely on the, on a day-to-day basis, I'm working with kind of cutting-edge AI stuff, and I'm definitely, I call it over the rainbow for the AI side, where it's like far out there thinking about crazy stuff with AI, and I love it. It's just like getting smarter and smarter every single day. But I think it's a great exercise to think about what is actually useful for an enterprise today. Obviously, I did the Mork and Mindy image in the last session that we were talking about. User face swapping is not super relevant for enterprise use cases today. So something like that might be not a good example of what we can do in terms of operationalizing this. But there are a lot of use cases, like I said, that we're trying to identify today, where those types of things can be very relevant today to directly save you time, directly save you money. Take something that I talked to a guy who spent 4 hours, I think it was 4 hours a week of auto tagging or tagging images and writing the description of shoes and things like that. We can help with that. That's part of your job that we hate. We can help with that. So look at those kind of things and then try to see if you can operationalize them. Again, just in terms of working with AI, I think that there's some things to make sure that you are thinking about in this process. Obviously we have human reviewable on here. We started out when we talked about AI, we definitely say that a human should be approving every single part of the process. That's not necessarily recommended today, in that it's so much smarter today and there's so many more things happening, but you do want to have it human reviewable. So a human should be in the process, should know what's happening, should know where to look to see what process is managing that, and just make sure that, again, it's that human in the loop concept, that they know about what's happening there. And then again, I think BrandKit is a great example of how BrandKit helps you establish your goals as an enterprise. What is your personality? What is your difference? What is your differentiator? What are you bringing to the market? And what is your edge in terms of how you're going to the market? And again, we can help define those things, and then AI can be informed about that, so that when it's creating content, when it's making choices about adding keyword tags or any of those things, it will know kind of your alignment and your brand voice to help you, make sure that everything is so if you're more lively and funny, or if you're more serious and don't want to be making any jokes, then that can be something where it's specifically informed that this is a very somber kind of voice, and it'll help you kind of align with that tone, even if it's not in specifically generated content. And then obviously make sure that you're tracking metrics and making sure that this is actually improving your processes and getting return on investment. And then a couple of quick things, like I actually really like this slide, and then there's one more slide after this, I think that, the next slide is really cool too. This, I think, and I won't go through every single thing in here, but this is a great way of looking for like red flags within your organization and Subi and I were still talking like the other day about like, are there really people who are like handing papers back and forth in an office? Yes, there are. Now, not obviously remote work, that's probably unlikely, but there's definitely organizations that we've talked to where the customer onboarding process is literally printing out a PDF and like walking it over to somebody's desk, and those types of things. So anything where paper is involved, we can probably help automate that, right? Anything where you're copying and pasting, like that's my nemesis of like almost my career, has been like, anytime you're copying and pasting, that means that most of the time something's going wrong, right? There's something that's not automated, there's something that's not integrated. So any of those types of things, like that's a key point. If you have an Excel spreadsheet where you're pasting stuff from Contentstack into the Excel spreadsheet, sending that to somebody, getting it back, copying and pasting it back in, and that's another place, like those types of things, please let us help you with those, because those are some...
Exactly, that's kind of what was happening with our publishing automation, as well as the SEO tagging. A lot of that was in spreadsheets, and pretty cool to have the spreadsheets go as inputs into the automation, so that the automation can work its magic, apply it to hundreds and thousands of pages.
Yeah. And that was the case too, where even part of the process we said like, we're actually going to keep the spreadsheet here and then have it automatically imported and then acted upon. So like some of it might be that we're only optimizing part of the process. So like those things we can help with as well. So this is really fun. The thing I like talking about with this slide is that it just shows a lot of different use cases for AI. Most of the time when we talk about like the sexy stuff like you were saying before, like where it's writing a blog post for you, or it's like creating an automated page or whatever, we're kind of talking about that external front-facing content. And we can help you with a lot of that. We can help you with your brand voice there. We can help you write in headlines, stuff like that. But a lot of places need a little bit more, like they're not comfortable with that within their organization quite yet. But there's a lot of stuff that you can do with AI and automation that can help you today, that is something that you can operationalize and implement that can help you today. That's not, that's more of the back end stuff. So a couple of really cool examples are, thinking about, I was just talking with Algolia this morning about when somebody comes to the site and searches for something and it's not finding that particular kind of content, we can trigger a process that says, AI can look through your product catalog and recommend to create a page that puts products related to that search onto a page, and then the next time someone comes in there and searches for that, you might have a page ready for them. Again, you should have a human review that page before it goes live. But that's a great example of where AI can help you with these like operationalization and back-end processes to make it more like just literally a return on investment, to make sure that that data is available to your end users. Another one might be like, we had a customer that they're using releases within Contentstack, and every time they do a release onto their site, they send the release to AI, have it write a description of each change that is in the release. This was published, this was unpublished. They put it into an email and they send it to their staff. So it's basically automated release notes for their changes on their internal, on their site. So that's something that it took somebody like a couple hours every week to put that together for their staff. And now that's an automated process. Again, it's not sexy, it's not on the front page, it's not whatever, but it's literally helping somebody save time in their day-to-day job. And they're able to do something that's less boring, more exciting, and that's maybe helping better with the like making real impact with that time and that content. Let me see if there's anything else. Anything that's cool on here that anyone wants to question about? Have any questions? Anything exciting? Yeah.
So where you're having AI write the alt text, we are working with a remote to try to do a trial for the alt text there, since that's our source of truth. Is there like a benefit to having it be in the DAM versus?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I would say that regardless of, we can do it both ways. We can have automation that is, tagging an image and that is putting it into your CMS. The keynote is that you want to sync it with a Primo, right? So that you make sure that it's able to actually add it back into your DAM so that you have the information in, if that's the source of truth, then you want it to generate it and then you can sync to Contentstack or vice versa. And I would say, and it kind of depends on the use case. There might be cases where you're doing a specific process in the CMS, whether it's maybe personalization or using something with BrandKit, where we might have a specific type of, we were working with a customer where they had keywords already on their images, but they wanted to add like personas, like this image is more relatable to this type of persona. So that was a new kind of tagging that they were adding to that based on like some AI stuff that we had. So that would be an example of one where maybe they're adding stuff, maybe we're adding stuff, and then we're syncing together. So those are all things, again, just don't cut and paste. That's the one thing I ask, is like, let's automate that part of it. So yeah, that's a great question. Awesome, so I think we're go to the next slide. So now we're gonna do, again, ask you guys to just think through some of these questions and think to your own lives and what are the types of things that you guys might be able to use AI for in your day-to-day lives.
Yeah, and we have two use cases here. One is SEO tagging, and the other one is AI translation. Picture one of your use cases, right? You can pick one of these use cases in the context of your own world, your own business. Maybe it is, think of how can your company use AI and automation to improve SEO tagging in your world? Or how can your company use AI translation to using AI and automation to make things better? Maybe one of these use cases is relevant for you, or maybe it is something else that is more pressing in your world. So picture whatever it is, and we'll go through the next slide. We'll go through a bunch of questions. Right here, in terms of how do you pick your next use case for AI and automation? There might be several things out there. How do you make sure, how do you prioritize, and how do you pick what to do next with AI and automation? And then we'll, as we go through the questions, we'll go through a bit of solutioning as well in terms of how you think about these questions. So the first one is, for whatever use case that you picked, what content-related process in that use case is really slow, or you're spending too much money on it, or there's a lot of manual effort in it? Any thoughts? Anyone want to call out anything?
And this is probably, cool. We've probably got some people doing copying and pasting, or typing manually keywords in, cutting and pasting from ChatGPT. where you're taking the story, putting in there saying, give me some keywords for this article, and then putting it back in. So any of those types of things, just like, again, thinking about like, what's boring about your day-to-day work, like, that you could look at.
Yeah, and whatever that is, another key aspect is what is the scale and frequency of it? Spending 2 hours on something like that every month or every week is not great, but maybe something you can live with. But if you or your team is spending like 2 hours every day, then you know for sure that should be a priority to automate, right?
Yeah, we actually had a team come to us and say that they're doing like a yearly review process, and they wanted help like automating the yearly review process. I was kind of like, you're spending 2 hours on this once a year, and how long is it going to take us to put this together? So yeah, those type of things is obviously like a return on investment that you want to consider. That if it's a 10-second process, maybe that's how long is it going to take you to set that up and that kind of thing. So that's definitely something that can be considered.
Another important aspect is handoffs, right? So a lot of times there is, this team does this part of the process and then hands off to this other team. There's obviously a lot of delay and, communication handoff or knowledge handoff, all that involved in any kind of those handoffs. So think about any of those processes where multiple teams are involved and there's a lot of handoff involved. So those might be great use cases to automate as well.
Yeah, and just even consistency between teams is an important thing, right? Where whether it's applying keywords or even filling out a specific like new customer page or something like that, if different teams are doing similar processes, helping to automate them creates consistency between those teams. So that's another important thing to think about as well.
Did you want to talk about
Yeah,
that?
and obviously in terms of precision, thinking about like how we were talking about the categorization, right? If it's very specific and you have to have, if you want it to go into your app and it has to have a app keyword on it, that's a very important kind of thing that requires a high level of precision. And then you have to think about like what team is going to be best at that. Is that something where you want an AI doing it and then having a human review, or vice versa, where a human is going to be doing that task and then an AI might come in and say like, we can say, does this look appropriate? And let us know in Slack if there seems to be something that's inappropriate or that it's not tagged correctly. So it's more, one can be actually doing it, and one can be kind of proactively fact-checking or quality control checking of some work that humans are doing. So that is a really great, again, we had a customer that was spending like several hours per week double checking links that people were putting into Contentstack, and we actually helped them create an automation that looks at, I think in one example it was like a man in a business suit, and it was linking to a swimsuit sale. AI can recognize that seems fishy, and it can proactively be looking at links and then send you an email or Slack message saying, hey, I discovered this weird thing, don't really know, you should have a human go look. And like those types of things can save like embarrassment, also like the missed opportunity for purchases, but also just save time on a day-to-day basis. And then yeah, the last one, obviously we talked a little bit about BrandKit. BrandKit's great at helping with your tone of voice and specific like things that you want to make sure that you're talking about. But it can also do things like check for compliance things, that you have to mention this whole word whenever you're talking about this other company, or your specific brand name has to have like the TM at the end, or whatever, like in terms of specific legal compliance. You can give like a list of those types of things into like a BrandKit type application and ask for AI to evaluate the content based on the rules and guidelines that you're setting up in the system. So, and again, that's a hard thing for a human to do, to like both read the whole article and understand it and then apply that mentally to like this list of a 32-page document that you have that your legal team created or whatever. This can do that really well. So, and again, it can be something that's retroactive, that's just looking at it after you published it and will let you know if something's weird, or it can be something that you do sort of proactively as part of the process. So there's a lot of different opportunities there.
Cool. Another important consideration is identifying what goes into your AI automation and what comes out of it, right? So what goes into it, or the input, like in the example that I gave, was spreadsheets, right? So that would be the input. Sometimes it is a spreadsheet. It could be, in your use case, it could be a prompt. It could be something else. But then also important to identify is, how do you want your output to be? Are you looking at specific output? Do you want to define exactly how your output should look like? Or are you, would you like AI to generate a non-deterministic output? So that is an important consideration to think about as you think about your use cases.
Yeah, and I just wanted to I'll kind of loop together a couple of these, but who's checking over, like I was mentioning, who's checking over the humans doing something, or who's checking over the AI doing something. It is possible, and as ironic as it sounds, it actually works really well, where you can have an AI that's adding keyword tags to something and then have another AI process, even if it's the same model, say hey, we just added keyword tags to this article. Does that seem right? And it does a really good job of reevaluating and fact-checking itself. That's actually, in a lot of the new models that we're seeing today, they're talking about the thinking models. That's one of the key things that they've been able to do that has made those models smarter, is they fact-check themselves, they second-guess themselves. So they have a process built in where it's just saying, you just did this thing, let's look at it again, does it seem right? And it just triggers a higher level of accuracy and precision in that. So I think, and that's something, again, that we can do as part of a very specific process in your workflows that says, these are automated by, we're doing adding keywords here, and then you're having another call where it comes back and says, okay, does this seem right? And then that really increases the accuracy and things like that in some of these specialty situations. And then, like I said, in terms of what is your workflow like currently, and then how can we incorporate AI checkpoints into those workflows to help you be more efficient?
Yeah, and something I missed in between. How do you know that the AI automation did a good job, right? So you did all of that automation. How do you define your success? It's very important to define that. And the benefits or the success could be defined in terms of the time saved, or the cost savings, or the amount in terms of volume, right? Like I was mentioning, are you able to automate hundreds or thousands of pages? So time, cost, volume, those could be your parameters for success.
Yeah, and then I'll say the very last one. Is anybody from Airbnb here? Yeah, there you go. Great. So I think you guys did such an awesome job about. I'm surprised I didn't recognize you. Such a great job doing AI stuff internally and then operationalizing it and evangelizing it inside the organization. So that's something also to think about, is that, as you kind of put together these actionable use cases where you can see an actual result, you can be the champion inside the organization where you're empowering other people to implement things and just kind of, again, evangelizing responsible and practical AI within the organization. I think that's a great, if there's not a lot of cases of that happening already, you could be a great opportunity for you to do something like that. Awesome.
Yeah.
Is that the last thing? I guess I should check to see if that's the last slide. Oh, yeah. So I guess, we're going to talk about this part.
Yeah, we kind of touched upon these in the beginning. So I know we are almost at time, so if we can also take questions at this time.
That sounds great, yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Sure.
We have a mic for questions, so you can hear.
Thank you.
Yep.
So we actually did 2 implementations of SEO tagging on Contentstack. One was migrated content, and we changed taxonomy, so we wanted to tag everything. And another one is a real-time, within the page integrated content stack with our internal LLM. In the first implementation, we did go through a POC and we ran the results against the content editors who would generally tag to check the accuracy. It's a technology-driven initiative. The results that came back is that they agreed with the tagging at 85%, if I remember correctly. But, you know, we can't define that as being, 80% correct, because tagging is generally subjective, right? So what the AI comes back may actually be the correct results. Just wanted, and I know you touched upon the accuracy in your presentation, but have you gone through something similar, and how did you handle, for example, any friction from, the actual people who would do the tagging who may not agree with the results that come in?
Yeah, that's definitely, whether it's just because of them being knowledgeable about the process, or because, there's obviously, people are worried about optimizing them out of a job, right? That's always something that we have to be really careful about. But I think, and that's where, try to work with that group and say, what are the things that, again, is boring about your job that we can help you with, as opposed to like implementing it on top of them. That's always a key, I think, factor. But I would say there's a couple of key things about, like, specifically what you brought up of learnings that we've had. One is that, again, to provide really good instructions about what is the goal between adding the keywords to this page. Like, that's literally something that you can tell AI, that we're trying to, add varied keywords in order to help with SEO strategies, or we're adding for searchability, or what is the specific thing that you're trying to kind of accomplish with that task. And it's really good about being able to, like, extrapolate that back to knowing the types of things to add to that. Like, if you're doing personalization, that's a little bit of a different use case. So that's one thought. And then secondly, again, we've had places that use BrandKit to set a corpus of 35 keywords or taxonomy terms, things like that. These are the only keywords that you're allowed to use, right? So then, again, we can give those to AI and say, out of these 35 keywords or 350 keywords, whatever, these are the ones you use, add those to this page, add this many of them for this goal. And we've seen, like, really good kind of accuracy in terms of how that's implemented, where it's not like, again, if you'll see something where it might tag it with AI plus artificial intelligence. Well, okay, that's kind of like, that's not necessarily useful. We want to try to have it, fit the specific category so that they can all roll up. You can be on the bubble chart with all of your bubbles going into the top right and stuff like that. Like, that requires kind of a keyword strategy. And so I think that that's something that, again, is part of how you implement that. So, but yeah, that being said, I think it's also a matter of, like, it gets better and better every day. So it's things that we were able to do with 3.5 model a couple of years ago were, like, pretty good, but now it's much better to, so making sure that you're using the newest technology and the newest models is also very helpful.
Yeah, I was going to echo that point. If any of you have worked with your brand teams and tried to put AI created content in front of them, they're not going to be responsive to that. But things are changing, things are improving. I think in that example, and probably lots of examples, you're going to have to work out what that middle ground is to get that team to spot check it or somehow be involved in the improvement process. If 85%'s out the door, you're 100%'s not too far off if you keep working at it. But you got to engage the right folks and work with them, or ultimately maybe get some executive sponsorship to kind of push faster on some of these things. Because now having a machine do it and a person do it, that's not more efficient ultimately, and that's what we're trying to drive here is efficiencies.
I would say, like, one other interesting idea too is that actually using MongoDB and our vector database set up with MongoDB, we actually have we haven't yet put this into, like, actual play, but using the APIs that we have with our Knowledge Vault, you can actually give AI access to those APIs and say, like, hey, if you learn something or get feedback from the customer that this was tagged wrong, right? It can actually create a memory that you give it access to create its own, like, notes in a vector DB that it's able to reference later. So that's actually one of the ways that, and again, a lot of the AI, the more modern AI models today, when they're doing, they had this is kind of dumb, but like a Pokemon, you guys heard about the Pokemon test? No, nobody? Okay. So, but they had the AIs running through like this Pokemon video game, and it had problems where it gets stuck on a wall or stuck in a tree or whatever, and then it would like not be able to finish the game. They allowed it to start taking notes about how it should react to specific situations, and then it beat the game. And so it was able to take notes saying like, if you hit a wall, turn, and like that was literally all it needed, was to have that kind of insights in terms of how to work within that game, and it was able to beat the game. So again, try to think about those types of opportunities where when you change something, have the AI keep track of that and add it to the notes, and it can even be like that's something that you add to the instructions also, where you say like, oh, it didn't figure out in this case that this is this situation, so I'm going to add it to the prompt, which is again one of those reasons why it's important to operationalize that, so that if there's a bunch of people that are using ChatGPT for creating keywords, and you add something to the knowledge of how our keyword strategy works, that should be something that happens and is implemented for everybody in the organization, not just don't send out an email saying, if you're doing cut and pasting in ChatGPT, make sure that you start doing this now. So that's a good example of that.
So the power of AI is that you do not need to give a bunch of rule sets, right? Rules or instructions. But for that 15% where it's not absolutely accurate, maybe one way to think about it is to define more rules around those specific use cases, so that in that case, if for this URL, and if you encounter the word mobile, for example, give it the mobile tag, something like that, right? That's not entirely using the power of AI to the fullest, but that might be a bridge to cover those that additional 15%.
Hello, my name's Nudini. I'm with Pilot, and I had a question. So right now, Pilot, we are upgrading our product from old product to new product. New product is a very much more efficient version of the old product with most of the old features. So with that being said, we have old content stack, old stack, and we're moving to a new stack. The new stack has a new strategy built around it. So as we're coming up with old product feature, let's say the feature is rewards, and rewards has, 3 different things, promotions, where promotion in old static was just thrown up there at the time. The new stack is going to have a strategy around it, but most of those items that are in the old stack will be carried over in a new stack, maybe in a new different position. The bottleneck we're finding is we have like 5-6 different features being developed at the same time, and so all of us are just sending in the content we need, and the content stack manager is having a bit of a bottleneck on how does he go one by one, putting in everything into the new schema, the new organization. Is there an AI use case or automation use case that would make that a little bit more streamlined, a little bit a faster process?
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's something that we could help with, and I'll give a couple of really quick, from less AI-based to more AI-based, right? Definitely in terms of anything that you can script, we can pretty much help with automate, right? Where even if it's something where it ends up calling out to like a Lambda function somewhere else, that we can help create an automation for that. It might be something that runs automatically as part of a process, where you're taking this and just mapping it to these fields and helping with that. Or it might be something where we have what's called like an on-demand automation now, where like a human can click on it while they're looking at the page, and it can actually like change the page for them. So there's a couple of different things along those lines where an automation can help create that content. And again, I think a lot of times that works if it's a very prescriptive type situation where you're literally like, this field goes here, this thing goes here, and it's a rule-based kind of system. But we also have some use cases where we literally send a bunch of information to AI and ask it, we essentially tell it about the schema on the page. Like, this is the content model that is available here. Take all of this stuff that I just sent to you, put it into that schema, put the headline where you think the headline should go, put the keywords where you think the keyword should go, and have it write out the page. So, and as part of that, you can say, while doing this, apply my brand voice, while doing this, make sure that you don't reference this old company anymore, or whatever that case may be. You can actually transform some of the content. And so yeah, so that's something where that part, again, that would be, I would say that would be a pretty extreme kind of like AI rewriting of content, but it might be something that could save significant time to kind of test that out and see what you can do with that.
So the developer's joke is how many developers does it take to change a light bulb?
Yeah.
First, my theory is that it wouldn't take longer to stand that up than it would just do the manually input the process.
I mean, and that was kind of where I was talking about the ROI on things. That is entirely possible. Like, that it's possible that, takes, a week, a day, or something to create an automation that does something, and then to test it out, and then during that time, people can be working on it manually and finish it. I think that's something to consider. But, in general, you can always learn from that, and then learn from that, like reuse that going forward for other things as well. So that's a a benefit that you could get from that as well. But yeah, that is definitely something to consider, right? You don't want to, I know in my day-to-day life, there's a lot of times when, I'll spend the entire weekend trying to optimize how my calendar works. And, it's like, yeah, that probably saved me like, 3 minutes a week. And I spent the entire weekend on it. But number one, it's cool that I can do this like cool thing. But then also, then I can learn from that and think about how I can apply that to other things as well. Yeah, great question. Awesome. Any other questions or thoughts or anything? Hopefully this was helpful? Again, we're trying to think about ways that hopefully you can take back some of this like today and look at some of the tools that we have available. We have AI Assistant, which is free. They talked about that this morning. We have our Automate tools, Brand Kit tools. There's a lot of functionality that we have around AI these days. And we're like super interested in how we can help you kind of implement this within your organization. Thank you. And thanks to MongoDB. How awesome are they like sharing their, yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Hope that inspired you all to look into your own worlds. And hopefully you can turn that around to make some impactful outcomes. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.